My mother changed the locks while my father was at work. I was 13 years old. I came home from school that afternoon to find my father sitting on the front step with 2 suitcases beside him. He was not crying. He was just sitting there very quietly looking at his hands. I sat down beside him on that step. Neither of us said anything for a long time. That image, my father on the front step with 2 suitcases, is the clearest memory of my entire childhood. Clearer than birthdays, clearer than holidays, clearer than anything else that happened in that house before or after. I am 31 years old now, and I have spent most of my adult life trying to understand what happened that day. Not just what happened between my parents, but what it did to all of us. What it cost my father, what it revealed about my mother, and what it taught me about the kind of person I want to be. My name is Thomas. I am a teacher from Leeds, and this is my parents' story, told by the child who watched it from the front step. My parents had been married for 14 years when my mother changed the locks. 14 years of what I had assumed, the way children always assume, was a normal marriage. They argued sometimes. Every couple does. But I had never seen anything that prepared me for a Tuesday afternoon in October when I came home to find my father locked out of his own house. I need to tell you about my father first, because this story does not make sense without understanding who he was. My father was the kind of man who showed up, every single day without exception. He worked long hours as a plumber, physical exhausting work, and he came home every evening and he was present. He helped with homework. He cooked on weekends. He came to every school event I ever had. He was not a perfect man. He had a temper sometimes, and he was not always good at talking about feelings. But he was there, consistently and completely there. He had built our house with a loan he spent 12 years paying off, not metaphorically. He had project managed the entire construction himself on evenings and weekends while working full-time. Every room in that house had his hands in it. My mother was different. She was sharp and ambitious and always slightly restless in a way that I understood better as an adult than I did as a child. She had given up a career she loved when I was born, her choice at the time. And I think somewhere along the way that sacrifice had curdled into resentment that she never fully processed. She met someone at work. I found this out years later. A colleague. Someone who represented a different kind of life to the one she had. I did not know any of this on that Tuesday afternoon. I just knew my father was sitting on the front step with 2 suitcases, and the door was locked behind him. I knocked on the door. My mother opened it. She looked at me and said, "Come inside, Thomas." And then she looked at my father and said, "I will have your remaining things sent to your mother's house." And she closed the door. I stood in that hallway and I heard my father pick up his suitcases from the step outside. I heard his footsteps on the path. I heard the gate at the bottom of the garden open and close. And I did not go after him. I have carried that with me for 18 years. The fact that I did not go after him. I was 13 years old and I did not know what to do, and I was frightened, and so I stayed. And my father walked away from his own house with 2 suitcases, and I let him go. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. My mother did not explain what had happened, not really. She said that she and my father had decided it was better to live separately. She said it was not my fault. She said my father would still be in my life. That last part was true. My father called every day. He came to collect me every Saturday morning without fail. He never missed a single Saturday in the entire time I was growing up. Whatever had happened between him and my mother, his commitment to me never wavered for a single day. But he never came back inside that house. He moved into a small flat near his mother's, 2 bedrooms. He gave me the larger one even though I was only there on weekends. He put up posters I liked and bought a games console and made the room feel like mine even though it never quite did. I asked him once, I must have been about 15, why Mom had changed the locks. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Your mother needed something I could not give her, and she made a decision. I do not agree with how she made it, but I understand that she needed to make it." That was all he ever said about it in front of me. I found out the full story when I was 22. My aunt, my father's sister, told me over dinner one evening when she had had slightly too much wine and slightly too much of carrying the secret alone. My mother had been having an affair for 8 months before she changed the locks. The man from work. She had decided she wanted to be with him, and she had made the decision to remove my father from the house rather than have a conversation that might have led somewhere more complicated. My father had known about the affair. He had found out 2 weeks before she changed the locks. He had asked her to end it. She had said she needed time to think. 2 weeks later, he came home from work to find his key did not fit the door anymore. She had not even told him it was over. She had just changed the locks. I sat with that information for a long time after my aunt told me, processing what it meant, reframing things I had grown up believing, understanding my father's quiet on that front step in a way I had not before. He had known. He had sat on that step with his 2 suitcases, knowing exactly why the lock had been changed, and he had still, when I asked him years later, refused to speak badly about my mother in front of me. I called him the next day. I told him I knew the full story. He was quiet on the phone for a moment. And then he said, "Your aunt talks too much." And I heard him smile when he said it. I asked him why he had never told me. He said, "Because she is your mother. And whatever happened between us has nothing to do with who she is to you." I want to say that I handled the information gracefully, that I processed it maturely and moved forward without anger. That is not what happened. I was furious, not for months, for years. A quiet, ongoing fury that I carried into my 20s and that affected every relationship I had in ways I did not fully understand until therapy helped me see the pattern. I was furious at my mother for the affair, for the locks, for the complete absence of any conversation with my father before she made her decision, for the way she had rewritten the story of their marriage in the years that followed, making herself the protagonist of a liberation narrative that conveniently omitted the 8 months of betrayal that preceded it. I was furious at myself for not going after him that day, for staying in that hallway while he walked down the path with his 2 suitcases, for being 13 and frightened and making the choice that a 13-year-old makes when they do not know what else to do. And underneath the fury, underneath all of it, there was grief. For the family we had been, for the house my father had built with his own hands that he never came back inside, for the version of my childhood that had been rewritten without my consent on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Therapy helped. It took years, and it was not linear, and there were sessions where I left feeling worse than when I walked in. But slowly the fury started to become something more manageable, something I could look at without it looking back at me. My mother and I have a relationship now. It is not the relationship it might have been. There is a careful distance between us that I think we have both accepted as permanent. I love her. She is my mother. But I see her clearly in a way I could not when I was young. And that clarity changes things. The man from work lasted 3 years. She has been in 2 relationships since. She is in her late 50s now and she lives alone in a flat not far from the house she kept. My father remarried when I was 24. A woman named Carol who is warm and funny and who treats my father with the consistent, ordinary kindness he always deserved. I was his best man. I gave a speech. I managed to get through most of it without crying, which I consider one of my greater achievements. He still lives in Leeds. We have dinner every other week. He is in good health and good spirits and he talks about his grandchildren, my sister's children, with a light in his face that makes everything that happened feel very far away. Last year I drove past our old house, the one he built. Someone else lives there now, a young family. There was a bicycle in the front garden and a child's drawing in the window, and the apple tree my father planted in the back garden was visible over the roofline. He planted that tree the year I was born. He told me once that he had chosen an apple tree specifically because he wanted something that would keep giving long after he was gone. It is still giving. I sat in my car outside that house for a few minutes, thinking about a Tuesday afternoon. A front step, 2 suitcases, a 13-year-old boy who did not go after his father. And then I drove to my father's house and I knocked on his door and Carol let me in and my father was in the kitchen making tea and he looked up when I walked in and said, "You are early." I said, "I know." And I sat down at his kitchen table and we drank tea and talked about nothing in particular for 2 hours. Some things you cannot fix. Some distances do not close completely. Some Tuesday afternoons leave marks that stay. But you can show up. You can keep showing up. You can sit at someone's kitchen table and drink tea and let the ordinary quiet of it say everything that words cannot reach. My father taught me that on a front step, with 2 suitcases, refusing to speak badly about the woman who had just changed the locks on his own house. He taught me that without saying a single word.